Hello. Did you know, according to a 2022 article published on thenerdist.com, the length of all of the roads in the world adds up to around 40 million miles long, which is close to half the distance to Mars. I have traveled quite a bit in my life, and I'm confident enough to say that most of us have traveled in a car or will travel in a car in the future. For the speech, I'll be going over the history of the American road trip, and by the end of this, you'll be informed on how vacations and traveling have become what they are today. First, I will go over the beginnings of the automobile and the first cross-country road trip. Then I will talk about the evolution of the road trip, and lastly, I will touch on what the American road trip looks like in modern day. The introduction and popularization of the automobile in America in the early 20th century allowed for the birth of the road trip and revolutionized transportation. According to a 2021 ThoughtCo article, Charles DeRay and Jay Frank, who were two brothers from Massachusetts, created the first American gasoline-powered automobile in the year 1893. The article goes on to state that American car manufacturer Henry Ford invented the improved assembly line, which reduced production costs for cars by reducing assembly time. This was able to catalyze the production and the possession of automobiles in America. The automobile provided means for getting place to place without public transportation, which led to people going longer distances, allowing for road trips to occur. In a 2022 article published by the National Museum of American History, the first cross-country road trip occurred in 1903. The 63-day California to New York road trip was accomplished by Dr. Horatio Jackson and C. Wall Crocker. Like Dr. Horatio Nelson Jackson, whose father-in-law was one of the wealthiest men in Vermont, the first people taking road trips were wealthy, according to a 2017 PBS article. Now that I've talked about the beginnings of the American road trip, I will now talk about how the road trip has evolved. The evolution of the road trip is marked by the creation of road systems and the availability for people of different socioeconomic and racial classes to be able to travel. The creation of the interstate highway system widened connections between different places, allowing for more widespread transportation and road trips. According to a 2021 article published by the U.S. Department of Transportation, President Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act in 1956, which established the formal interstate construction program and a funding mechanism to create a nationwide freeway network. The article goes on to state that the first interstate highway built under the 1956 Federal Aid Highway Act was the US 40, which was later designated as the I-70 Mark Twain Expressway, which started in St. Charles County in Missouri. As the road trip evolved, it was increasingly available to people of various socioeconomic and racial lines. In a 2017 PBS article, it stated that vacations became an American tradition for growing middle-class families after World War II. This was due to post-war prosperity, mass consumption, and paid vacation leaves, which would enable people to be able to take vacations more often. According to the Candace C. Taylor's 2020 book called The Overground Railroad and the Green Book in the Roots of Black Travel in America, the Green Book was the Bible of Black travel. Published from 1936 to 1967, it was a guide for black travel across the United States during a very difficult and dangerous time due to Jim Crow laws and racial discrimination. And what I have here is a photocopy of the front page of the Green Book. Having talked about the evolution of the road trip, I'm now going to go over what the road trip looks like today. Modern day road trips have been more popularized due to a larger interstate system, and which has encouraged people to visit more popular spots in the United States. From 1956 until now, road to interstates have grown exponentially. In a 2020 article published by the U.S. Department of Transportation, the current length of the interstate system is 46,876 miles, which is around 4,000 miles longer than it was in 1956. In a 2020 survey on Statista.com, the highway network in the United States has a total length of around 4.17 million statute miles. Today, Americans travel and take vacations on a yearly basis, sometimes more. In a 2022 article published on travelandleisure.com, drivers headed most often to Orlando, Las Vegas, and Nashville, according to data from AAA. and it was reported in a 2022 article published on thevacationer.com on a survey taken of about 1,000 people that 80% of them said they were going to take a road trip at some point during the year. Statistics like this show how often people travel by car in modern day. In conclusion, I went over the beginnings of the automobile in the first cross-country road trip. I then went over the evolution of the road trip, and lastly, I touched on what the American road trip looks like in modern day. I discussed the background of the American road trip and informed you how vacations and traveling have become what it looks like today. From 1893 all the way to today, taking road trips is something that is ever present and has always contributed to a piece of American history. Thank you.